Today's Gospel is from Luke chapter 24. Now on that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how the chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early in the morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the woman had said, but they did not see him." Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on, but they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is almost evening, and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed it and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road, and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. Today's Gospel is one of my favourite passages in the whole Bible. Two of Jesus' followers are heading out from Jerusalem to Emmaus. They are sad and confused at Jesus' death and all the crazy stories that they have heard. Tall tales of angels and empty tombs. On the way they encounter a stranger who has a long conversation with them about the scriptures. He starts at the beginning with Moses and makes his way through all the prophets. He made such an impression on them that they insisted he stay with them for dinner. Then he did something with the bread, something that they'd seen somewhere else before. Their eyes were opened, and they suddenly saw that it was Jesus who had been with them the whole time. And as soon as that, he vanishes. Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked to us on the road? They said. And then they got up and went to the apostles and told them all about the Lord who makes himself known in the breaking of the bread. There are so many aspects to the story. The fact that the story takes place on a journey, Jesus walking alongside them, just as he walks with us on the journey of life. There is that evocative description where our hearts not burning within us, hearts burning with love in the presence of the one who is love. Hearts burst aflame at his words, at his truth. And finally there is the meal. Jesus takes the bread, blesses it, breaks it and gives it to them. Jesus reveals himself to them, gives himself to them, just as he gives himself to us in the Eucharist. This whole story is itself Eucharistic in pattern. It begins with the Lord teaching us, showing himself to us in the words of Scripture. He gives himself to us in bread and wine, and we are sent out to share the good news. This climax, this conclusion, this happy ending is not available to us in this time when we're parted. Not sharing in this weekly pattern, this shared ritual, this communion, is hard. It has been wonderful to experiment with all the sorts of new technologies and new ways of praying and living our Christian lives together. But I have to say, I miss the Eucharist. It is missing. The Church is not fully the Church without it, and I find myself sad and full of longing for the day when we will share it together again. The story of the road to Emmaus still has something to offer us, I think. For whereas before it represented our weekly journey, what we did on a Sunday morning, in this season it seems to me to characterise the whole pattern of our lives. Like the disciples, we find ourselves a bit lost, saddened, confused. We find ourselves in an unexpected and bewildering frame of mind, not sure what to think, not sure what is going to happen. We, like them, are on a journey that will one day reach a conclusion, though we have some walking to do before we get there. And like them, we know that it is Jesus who walks beside us on the way. We might not realise that he is with us, but he is our constant companion too. The message that he gives the disciples both acknowledges our human frailty and weakness, but offers the promise of a better tomorrow. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory? Jesus is the one who has known every pain, every torment. He bore it and is with us in it, but he brings life with it, in spite of it, and maybe even through it. The disciples' journey also had a destination, a time when all of this might begin to make sense, when the mist would clear, they would see the Lord and enter into a new life. Not the one that they had before, but a life that truly was the fullness of life, nonetheless. But we know that Jesus is waiting for us at the end of it, just as he is with us every step of the way. Her Majesty the Queen, in her address to the nation earlier in the month, quoted the Vera Lyng song, "We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when." For us, we do not know when. St. Luke tells us they walked about 7 miles, but who knows how long we must walk. But we do know where we're heading. We know that Jesus is waiting for us at the end of it, just as he is with us every step of the way. He is ready to meet us in bread and wine, and in one another once again. It was only at the end of their journey that the disciples realised that their hearts had been burning within them the whole time. For all the ups and downs of the journey, for all the ups and downs of the history of Israel that they'd heard told afresh, Jesus had been with them. They had felt it, they just hadn't paid attention to what they were feeling. When all this is over and we look back, I wonder what bits of it we will feel like our hearts burned within us. What times, happy or sad, we will come to realise that Christ was close to us, here in our very midst. And more than that, the disciples were caught out because they didn't know to look for Jesus. But we have their story to inspire us, to prompt us to search our feelings, examine our hearts, to still ourselves and to seek the voice of the one who calls us. We may or may not know us with him now, but we can be assured that he is here, and one day we will look back and see that he was our travelling companion. He was with us from the very beginning to the very end. Amen.